Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm here to tell you about my journey to find the last great video store. Last spring, I had a very specific movie craving. I wanted to watch Fresh Horses, a 1988 romantic drama, most notable for reteaming Molly Ringwald and Andrew McCarthy after Pretty in Pink. It was a gray, chilly day in Los Angeles, and I was feeling nostalgic for spring in my hometown of Cincinnati, Ohio. Fresh Horses was shot there. I was hoping I could capture some of the misty, late March vibes the movie evokes so well, and in doing so, take a cinematic field trip back home for a few hours. So I did what I usually do when searching for a movie in the year 2018, Googled Fresh Horses streaming, but there were no results, not even for rental. After that, I moved on to less legal methods, beginning with YouTube, but even then, the best version of the movie I could find was a Polish dub. Now, Fresh Horses isn't a great movie, but Viggo Mortensen and Ben Stiller also star alongside Ringwald and McCarthy, and the movie is only 30 years old. It should be easily accessible online with only a few clicks. When I couldn't find Fresh Horses, I found myself frustrated by the lack of video store options. Why couldn't I just jump in the car, rent the movie, and come home? This led me to remembering the last time I watched Fresh Horses. I rented it from a local Blockbuster as a teenager. By the time I could order Fresh Horses from Amazon, the amorphous melancholy that had inspired me to watch the movie in the first place had passed. Because I couldn't access Fresh Horses, I felt like I couldn't fully engage with the restless nostalgia I wanted to deal with by watching the film. We all have our own Fresh Horses, movies that transport us back to a specific time, mood, and location that exists otherwise only in the haziness of our own memories. When we can't access these films, it feels as if an essential pathway that connects us to our past and our past selves is missing too. My search for Fresh Horses sent me on one of the greatest adventures of my life, a journey to find the last great video store. In an age of countless streaming platforms, the ability to custom order jeans from one's own bathtub, and one-click button for Doritos, the idea of taking the time and space necessary to get in the car, visit a brick-and-mortar video store, pick out a few flicks, and return them all before incurring the dreaded late fees might seem quaint, insane, or perhaps a bit of both. But we lost far more than big blue and yellow signs dotting the strip malls of America when we said goodbye to video store culture. When we said goodbye to video stores, we lost an essential gathering place for film fans of all ages, a vital archive tracing cinema's history, and an access point to all kinds of media. In doing so, we all lost a little bit of what made us love movies in the first place. By the end of 2018, 375 million people across the globe subscribed to a streaming service like Netflix, Amazon Prime, HBO Now, or Hulu. Seemingly, the endless scroll of a streaming service suggests an endless amount of cinematic choices, but this is actually an illusion. Streaming platforms actually don't provide the depth of the catalog we once had in video stores, and they don't allow us to access films in the same way we once did. So, with all of this knowledge in mind, I set out on my own journey to look for the last great video store. The average Blockbuster used to carry in the neighborhood of 10,000 titles. At Scarecrow Video in Seattle, the world's most expansive video store, there are more than 130,000 titles tracing cinema's history and covering every decade of motion pictures, television, experimental film, and more. The scroll of a streaming platform suggests an endless amount of cinematic choices, but as I started looking further, I realized that that wasn't actually the case. As of today, there are only 3,869 films on Netflix, far less than half of what was available at your average neighborhood Blockbuster. If you go to the most expansive streaming platform, Amazon Prime, there are 17,000 films available to stream and another 27,000 available to rent. But that's still only about a third of what's available at Scarecrow Video. On a service like Hulu, there are only 1,500 films available, far below even the paltriest of blockbusters. And given the fickle nature of streaming catalogs, topical in-house content made by the platforms, and the unpredictability of rights issues, there's absolutely no guarantee that a film you love will remain on a service forever. Apple recently made headlines by removing films users had already paid for. Given the unpredictability of these catalogs, there's absolutely no guarantee that a film you love will stay on a streaming service without a tactile object either. Netflix only gives disc releases to its bigger hits like Stranger Things. By removing the tactile experience of visiting the video store and picking out a film, we've actually ceded control back to corporations and given up a choice that was once provided by the video store. There's another key issue with what's available on streaming sites as well. Only a small sliver of classic cinema is easily accessible. As of today, there are 140 films on Netflix from cinema's first century, 1900 through 1990. It's about 3% of their entire catalog. When you search for something even as general as 1950s movies on Netflix, you're instead given homegrown titles like 13 Reasons Why, certainly not what you were looking for. When users have to dig for something even as general as 1950s movies, they're likely to become frustrated and default to watching something easy to find and familiar. Now, I get that the average consumer might not be as concerned about crunching these numbers as I am, but essential landmark films such as Citizen Kane, Casablanca, and Chinatown are not currently available on any streaming service without an additional rental fee. These are not obscure titles. They're landmark cinema, the kind of films that can inform a cinephile's entire life just by seeing them one time. When film fans can't access these films, it feels as if we've left them to languish, and it might change a young film fan's entire viewing history. Why spend hours searching for a director's cut of Alien 3 when you could just stream an episode of The Handmaid's Tale instead? With the loss of Filmstruck, the only streaming platform dedicated not only to the preservation of classic cinema, but essential art house, foreign language, cult films, we've lost an essential curatorial voice in the streaming landscape. Filmstruck carefully selected weekly and monthly themes that educated users while entertaining them. They were the rare service dedicated to providing the kind of context, both historical and cultural, to fully understand their films. This is the same kind of context we used to get from video store clerks. I had a major light bulb moment early on in my search for the last great video store. Culturally, we never valued the video store as a living, breathing cinematic archive. Rights issues such as music clearances, the consolidation of studios, and contractual disputes can and do limit what films end up available on streaming services, but if a video store purchased a copy of a film, it belonged to them forever, barring, of course, a dreaded meltdown in a hot back seat. No streaming service can offer the same guarantee. For many films, these home video releases were the only way to see them, as their masters were tied up in studio vaults. The video store allowed visitors to access titles that may never show again in a theater, on television, or receive a disc release. They became our de facto cinematic archives, and some still are. At Scarecrow Video in Seattle, 88 of their 100 rarest titles are not currently available in the Library of Congress, and 44 are not available to the public anywhere except at Scarecrow. In dismantling video store culture, we made some titles unavailable forever through our own hubris and insistence that streaming would become the end-all and be-all for consuming content. So, with all of this knowledge in mind, I set out on my own journey to look for the last great video store in Los Angeles. My journey took me from the far west side to deep into the San Fernando Valley, from dusty VHS porno-filled back rooms to expertly curated director's shelves, from feeling like a stranger in Tinseltown to finally knowing I was a member of my city's own cinematic community. I spent hours perusing these stores, feeling so calm as I picked up boxes, looked at log lines, and read about these films, an experience you can't get on streaming. You can't experience that same tactile moment. In these moments, I felt a renewed sense of passion for the films I was looking at, and I felt my faith restored in the whole art of filmmaking, something you rarely get when you're scrolling the black of a laptop. I spent hours perusing these libraries, that's what video stores really are, discovering films I'd never even seen before, as well as the kind of ephemera made for TV movies, rare cartoon compilations, commercials that we've totally forgotten about in the rush to move all of our entertainment to streaming. In these moments, I realized how essential the video store was as an archive and as a record of our entire public and private lives over the last century. And perhaps most pivotally, I watched children prowl video stores as I once had done. I watched these kids pick up films, share them with their parents, and discuss the films they were watching. No algorithm was limiting their choice. The choice belonged entirely to them. On another visit to Eddie Brand's Saturday Matinee, one of my favorite video stores in Los Angeles, a clerk told me that for many of their patrons, visiting the video store was the only kind of person-to-person interaction they got all week. No streaming service can offer that kind of person-to-person communion. Streaming services simply aren't encouraging the spirit of discovery and curiosity in the next generation of film fans, aspiring artists, and filmmakers, but the video store can. Now, I'm lucky to live in a city with a thriving video store culture, but even in the months I spent on this journey, Odyssey Video, one of the stores I profiled, which featured an extensive VHS collection, some of it quite rare, closed. And from the outside, it may seem as if video stores are so absent from our national consciousness that they may never return again. But the same was once said of record sellers and of booksellers, and those cultures now flourish once again. I believe video stores can do the same. On the course of my journey, I assembled a crowdsourced map of all remaining video stores I could find in the world. I discovered hundreds of family videos in the American Midwest, boutique stores in locations like Toronto, and stores in faraway places like Iceland and Brazil. In assembling these maps, I found passion, community, and love from the patrons and owners of these video stores, their own histories entwined with their video stores. It was through these conversations and assembling my map, which now has over 500 locations of video stores throughout the world, that I realized that a trip to the video store is, and always has been, about love. Video stores are a conduit to developing a love of cinema and its endless power. They allow us to create treasured memories by sharing the movies we love with the people we love. They encourage a love of discovery, of finding your next favorite thing, and of sharing that favorite thing with your fellow worshipers in the church of film. And try as we might, we cannot destroy love. There will always be signs of life as long as there is love, and the video store is all about love. Since this journey began, I'm pleased to report the opening of 2 fantastic new video store locations destined to become iconic American locations: Beyond Video in Baltimore, Maryland, and Video Vortex in Raleigh, North Carolina. Both of these stores are driven by love, passion, and community. They've been built from the ashes of Blockbuster to recreate a rental experience that truly values the customer because they know what it's like to live in a world that's lost video stores. I can't wait to visit these stores and step into a new era of video rentals. New conversations and communities are growing around these stores, and I believe that more will follow suit. I'm so eager for Vidiots, the only video collection in North America curated solely by women, to share its incredible library of 60,000 titles with Los Angeles once again. The video store is and always has been an essential community cornerstone, one that allows us to access the full breadth of cinema's history, connect with our fellow film fans, and discover media we didn't even know existed. But if we're not careful, we will lose video stores forever. We have to ensure their survival together as a community, as a nation of people who loves films. So if you haven't been to the video store in a while, I know you likely haven't, I encourage you to take a Sunday afternoon like this one and go back. Find your next favorite movie just by taking a chance on a rental. Crack up over your favorite comedy by sharing it with somebody who's never seen it before. Complain to your fellow patrons about how that new horror movie wasn't scary at all, and let the clerk recommend something that will keep you up all night. Look for your own last great video store, and you might just rediscover a part of yourself that streaming video can never touch. The little girl in you who fell in love with movies after renting Disney's Cinderella from her local Blockbuster and was forever changed by the cinematic magic contained within the 4 walls of her local Blockbuster. And before I go, I must tell you that the story of Fresh Horses has a happy ending. After writing about my journey for the last great video store on the Blacklist blog, Dilcia Barrera, a programmer at LACMA, reached out to me to ask if I'd like to discuss my piece and screen the film there. In order to facilitate the screening, Sony had to strike a brand new 35mm print of the film. It looked gorgeous in LACMA's Bing Theater. Because a new print had been made of the film, Sony also created a new digital master of the movie. You can currently stream it on Amazon Prime, or rent it from your local video store. Thank you.